Welcome back to another episode of Reality Roundtable, everyone. I'm your host, Jonathan Brown. And have you ever caught yourself just sitting there, just sitting by yourself, and you start replaying something that already happened in your life? Like your mind just hits replay without asking you first. Maybe it's a mistake you may have made. Maybe it's something you may have said. Or it could be something that you should have done differently. And no matter how much time passes, it still feels fresh. So today, I want to talk about that. Because a lot of people don't realize it, but dwelling on the past isn't just thinking, it's actually staying stuck. Now, let's be honest for a second. Thinking about the past, that's normal. Everybody thinks about the past. But dwelling on the past, that's completely different than just thinking about the past. Dwelling on the past is when you keep going back in time in your mind, but it's not to learn, but it's just to sit and sulk in it. It's when your mind replays the mistakes you've made, but it doesn't rewrite a new lesson for you to learn for future endeavors. And if you're honest with yourself, you already know when you're doing this. And that feeling of doing that could be heavy on you. It's like you're carrying something that already happened into moments that haven't even happened yet. So let's talk about mistakes. Because that's usually where all of this starts. You start thinking about mistakes that you've made, and trust me, we all have them. Things you wish you could redo, moments you wish you could have handled better. But here's the problem with that. If you're only thinking about the mistake and you're not using it as a lesson, then you're not growing. You're just reliving the mistake all over again. And that's a dangerous place to be. Because mistakes are supposed to be teachers. They're not supposed to be anchors. When you stay stuck in the past, you stop moving forward. Not physically, but mentally and emotionally. You start second guessing yourself. You hesitate more. And you question decisions that you haven't even made yet. And over time, that hesitation turns into inaction. And that's how growth gets stunted. And it's not because you can't grow. It's because you're too busy looking backwards. Now let me point out something that a lot of people don't usually talk about. Dwelling in the past doesn't just affect your past. It also affects your future. Dwelling in the past stops you from going after new goals. Because when you're supposed to be going after new goals, you're thinking, what if I mess up again? What if I fail the same way? So instead of trying to go after those new goals, you pause. You wait, and you overthink. And sometimes, worst of all, you don't move at all. When your mind has nothing new to focus on, it defaults to what's familiar. And for a lot of people, that's the past. And that's where the phrase comes in, an idle mind. Because when you're not actively building something, your mind starts replaying something. And usually, it's not really the good memories. What it replays are the memories that are usually tied to regret. While you're focused on what already happened, life is still going on. And opportunities don't wait for anybody. They don't pause just because you're stuck in your head. So what happens? Those opportunities will pass you by. And it's not because you're not capable of the opportunity. It's because you're not present enough for the opportunity. And that right there could be a difficult thing for a person to accept. And at first, it may feel small. They may just be thoughts here and there. But over time, it starts to spread. It starts to affect the mood that you're in. It starts to affect your energy, and it affects your confidence. And it can affect the relationships that you have with people. Because dwelling on the past will cause you not to show up as your full self. And when you're not showing up as your full self, you'll be physically there, but you won't be there all the way mentally. So the real question is, how do you stop dwelling in the past? Well, you can start with this. You can stop by not ignoring the past, but you can actually use it. Every mistake has a lesson attached to it. But you have to actually take the lesson and leave the rest of it behind. Because carrying the mistake, that's what weighs you down. And moving forward doesn't mean you're forgetting the mistakes you made. It just means you're deciding that those moments won't control you anymore. It means you're choosing growth over guilt, progress over perfection, and action over overthinking. And you don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to stop living like your past defines your next move. And that's the thing about the past. It doesn't knock before it shows up. You might be wondering, why do I keep thinking about this? Why do I keep thinking about that moment? And why that mistake in particular? Out of everything that's happened in your life, why does your mind keep going back there? And it's usually because it's something in your life that's unresolved. And it's not always external. Sometimes it's internal. And maybe you never forgave yourself for that mistake. Maybe you never fully understood what happened. And maybe you never gave yourself permission to actually move on from the mistake. So your mind keeps bringing it up, not to torture you, but to get your attention. So here's something subtle. When you replay the past, it can make you feel like you're doing something productive. It can make you think that you're actually figuring it out. Like if you think about it long enough, you'll somehow come up with a thing to fix it. But honestly, you can't change what already happened. So all that overthinking, it gives the illusion of control without actually giving you control. So what can you actually control? What you can control is the story you tell yourself about what happened. Two people can go through the same situation and walk away with completely different meanings. One person may say, that mistake proves I'm not good enough. While the other person says, that mistake showed me exactly what I need to improve on. Could be the exact same situation, but as you can see, because of the mindset, they'll have different outcomes. So then the question becomes, what story are you choosing? And here's a part that a lot of people tend to struggle with, and that is letting go. Because it can feel like, if I let this go, does that mean it didn't matter? Or does that mean I'm just okay with what happened. And the answer to that question is no. Letting go doesn't mean it didn't matter. It means you're not letting it control you anymore. And there's strength in that, more than a lot of people tend to realize. And sometimes you don't even realize how much weight you're actually carrying because it tends to become normal. The overthinking, the second guessing, the hesitation, it just becomes a part of your daily life. Until one day, you finally decide to let something go. And that's when you'll start to feel lighter. You'll become more clear, and you'll tend to become more present. And that's when it hits you. I didn't have to carry that weight this whole time. So how do you actually stop the cycle? Because awareness is one thing, but action is another. It starts small. It starts by catching yourself in the moment. When your mind starts replaying something, just pause and ask yourself, is this helping me right now? If the answer is no, you gently bring your focus back. Not aggressively, not judging yourself, just redirecting. And here's a mistake that a lot of people make. They try to stop thinking about the past. But the mind doesn't work that way. You don't just remove a thought and leave an empty space there. You replace it. You replace it with something intentional, whether that be a goal, a plan, something you're building. Because when your mind has direction, it has less reason to wander backward. So one of the best ways to actually stop dwelling on the past is to actually start doing something in the present and working towards the future. Even if it's small, even if it's imperfect. Because action pulls you into the present and it gives your mind something real to focus on instead of something that already happened. You ever tend to feel like when you're actually being productive, that your mood actually tends to be better than when you're actually sitting there and doing nothing and not being productive? Then you start thinking, man, like nothing tends to be going right in my life. This is kind of what that episode is talking about. So the more you move, the less you tend to replay. And this one right here, this one could be big. Because a lot of dwelling comes from self-judgment. Being hard on yourself, holding yourself to a certain standard, that doesn't leave room for mistakes. Just think about it. You're human. You're never going to get everything right. So at some point, you have to make a decision to forgive yourself. And it's not because it's easy. It's because it's honestly necessary. You're not the same person you were back then. Even if it doesn't feel like it sometimes. You've learned things from your past. You've experienced things. And you've grown in ways that you probably haven't even noticed. So holding your current self hostage to your past self doesn't make any sense. You have to give credit to yourself for the growth that you experience, even if the growth is quiet. So imagine this. What would your life look like if you weren't constantly being pulled back by the past? What would you go after? What would you try? And what decisions would you make differently? Because that version of you is still available, but it does require one thing. It requires you to let go of what's behind you. So now, after everything we've talked about, I want you to really sit with this question. Are you holding on to the past, or are you learning from it? Because those are two completely different paths. One of those paths is going to keep you stuck, while the other path is going to move you forward. And at the end of the day, no one else can make that decision for you. That decision is 100% completely yours. So if this episode made you think, that's a good thing. If this episode made you uncomfortable, that might be an even better thing. Because growth usually starts where being uncomfortable really is. So take what you need from this episode and apply it to your own life. But not all at once, just one step at a time. I'm your host, Jonathan Brown, and thank you for listening to another episode of Reality Roundtable. And we'll be back next Wednesday with another episode. Thank you, and have a great day.